This meeting of the Administrative Regulation Review Subcommittee will come to order. Secretary, please call the roll.
Senator Rocky Adams. Senator Wilson. Here. Senator Yates. Present. Representative Bridges. Representative Gordon. Representative Marzian. Co-Chair Lewis.
Here.
And Chair West.
Here. We have a quorum. We are duly constituted to conduct business. Before we move on to our regular business, we need to take care of some housekeeping. Our members serve for 2 years and have, luckily for them, they have been reappointed. So we need to do some elections of our chairs. First, the Speaker of the House appointed Representative Derek Lewis. Congratulations. As co-chair of the Administrative Regulation Review Subcommittee on January 2nd, 2025. Is there a motion from House members to renew the election of Representative Lewis as House co-chair?
Motion.
We have a motion.
Second.
We have a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Without objection, so ordered. Congratulations.
Thank you, Co-Chair. The President of the Senate appointed Senator Stephen West as co-chair of the Administrative Regulation Review Subcommittee on January 7th, 2025. Is there a motion from Senate members to renew the election of Senator West as Senate co-chair? Motion. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Without objection, so ordered. Congratulations.
Thank you. As is usual, please silence your cell phones. Next matter of business is approval of the minutes. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval? We have a motion and a second. Without objection, is so ordered. Please call the first regulation.
Office of the Attorney General, 40 KAR 9010 with staff suggested amendment.
40 KR 9010 amends to require the Commission to review applications and distribute funds at least once per year instead of continuously. Require the Commission, when awarding funds, to consider the extent to which the application aligns with funding priorities set annually and published by the Commission. Require financial reports to be submitted through the Commission's grant portal and make updates and clarifications. The staff amendment amends Section 4 to specify a deadline for responding to the Commission's request for supplementation or other inquiries, and amends various sections to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Jessica Bowman.
Christopher Thacker.
Thank you. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? We have a motion and a second. Without objection, so ordered. Any questions from members of the committee for the Office of the Attorney General? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Personnel Board, 101 KAR 1325.
101 KR 1325 amends to abolish job classifications of Human Rights Enforcement Branch Manager and Human Rights Housing Compliance Supervisor, rename a job classification title, reduce probationary periods of several job classifications to 6 months, which removes them from being listed in the regulation, and increase the probationary period from 6 to 12 months for the classification, or increase from 6 to 12 months for the classifications of Building Code Plans Reviewer 1 and Building Code Field Inspector 1.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Yes, Gordon Rowe, Executive Director.
Eric Griggs, General Counsel.
Thank you so much. There are no staff amendments or agency amendments. Do we have any questions from members on this set of regulations? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Education and Labor Cabinet, Board of Education, Department of Education, 701 KAR 5055 with staff suggested amendment.
This regulation is being amended to remove reference to local Board of Education members. The staff amendment amends the statutory authority paragraph to add a statutory citation.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Good afternoon. Todd Allen, Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel, Kentucky Department of Education and State Board of Education.
Thank you. There's a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? We have a motion and a second. Without objection, so ordered. Any questions from members on this regulation from the Education and Labor Cabinet? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Public Protection Cabinet, Office of Claims and Appeals, 802 KAR 1010, 802 2010, 802 3010, 802 3020, 802 3030, 802 3040, 802 3050, and 802 3060. All regulations have staff suggested amendments, and 2010 also has an agency amendment.
802-1010 is being amended to clarify filing and processing procedures, make motion practice deadlines uniform, establish procedures for the issuance of subpoenas, and incorporate the subpoena form by reference. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A. 802-2010 is being amended to require the use of a claim form or submission of claims through the online portal, require additional documents and attachments if necessary for a full statement of the claim, add the online portal as one of the methods to file a claim, provide alternatives to a court reporter to include audio recording or audio-visual recording, decrease the number of days to respond to a motion or pleading, decrease the number of days for a moving party to reply to a response, require board proceedings to be subject to the Kentucky Rules of Civil Procedure and the Kentucky Rules of Evidence, except as otherwise established in KRS Chapter 49A, this regulation, or an order from the board or hearing officer, authorize the board or hearing officer to waive application of the Kentucky Rules of Evidence and incorporate forms by reference. The staff amendment amends Section 13 to specify circumstances under which the board or hearing officer may waive application of the Kentucky Rules of Evidence and amends various other sections to comply with the drafting and formatting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A. The agency amendment to this regulation amends Section 6 to delete the option for the board to recommend an order of dismissal if the agency fails to respond to a claim within 30 days while retaining the option to enter a show cause order or consider the facts of the claim admitted and render a decision. 802-3010 amends the Crime Victims Compensation Board application and updates requirements and provisions of the board. 802-3020 amends to establish payment amounts for covered treatments, exams, and services to be paid at the Medicaid reimbursement rate on the date of filing. 802-3030 establishes guidelines for determining eligibility criteria for certain types of compensable expenses and lists the documentation required to claim the expenses. 802-3040 establishes the procedures for crime victims to file an additional award for compensable expenses that arise after being granted an initial award. 802-3050 establishes procedures for a crime victim to submit a request for an emergency award and the Crime Victims Compensation Board's process for reviewing emergency award requests. 802-3060 establishes guidelines for collecting payments from offenders after the Crime Victims Compensation Board has issued an award to the victim of the offender's criminal act. The staff amendments to Title 802, Chapter 3, Regulations, amends various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A, correct statutory citations, and make technical changes.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
John Hardesty, Executive Director, Office of Claims and Appeals.
Shelby Bevan Sullivan, Staff Attorney, Office of Claims and Appeals.
Thank you so much. There are staff amendments. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendments? Without objection, it is so ordered. There is also an agency amendment. Are there any questions or discussion regarding the agency amendment? Seeing none, is there a motion for approval of the agency amendment? There's a motion and a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. So we have before us this set of regulations as amended by the staff amendments and the agency amendment. We have any questions from members? Senator Yates has a question.
Sweet. Thank you, Director Hardesty. I know that we passed some legislation, and Senator Denise Harper Angel had been really working hard on trying to streamline some of this and for crime victims. So I'm glad to see we're doing this in our regs in some ways. Just reading through though, under the 802 KAR 20010, we're changing some of the period. Is that kind of just to kind of reduce some of the strict compliance that we have with court rules and to give a little more discretion as maybe non-attorneys and others are following this? Is that why that to kind of step away from the rules of evidence? I'm assuming that. And then I'm also looking at the change in the period promotion time from 30 days to 20 days and then from 15 to 10, is that just to streamline and move things faster? If you just don't mind, give me just a brief explanation.
Sure. Thank you, Senator. So the ones you're referring to, I believe, are 802 KAR 1010 and 2010. 1010 cleans up some procedures for the Board of Tax Appeals, so that actually does not relate to the Crime Victims Program. Okay. 2010 cleans up some procedures for the Board of Claims. We changed the motion filing deadlines to bring those two regulations closer together in terms of the time frames. Both of those boards adjudicate adversarial claims between normally state agencies and individual parties or taxpayers. And so it just made sense to make those all consistent throughout. And then your other question was regarding eliminating the use of the rules, or not eliminating, giving them the option to waive the rules of evidence. So under KRS Chapter 13B, the Board of Claims is actually exempted from the provisions of 13B. And so we lay out all of the procedures for practice before the Board of Claims within the regulation. And so just like in Chapter 13B, where hearing officers have the ability to consider hearsay if they deem it appropriate, we felt that we needed some sort of latitude for hearing officers and the parties to also agree to waive those in appropriate circumstances.
I appreciate the explanation and explaining the difference between the two.
Thank you, Senator.
Any other questions on this set of regulations? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Staying in Public Protection Cabinet, Department of Alcoholic Beverage Control, 804 KAR 4415 with staff suggested amendment.
This regulation is being amended to outline the direct-to-consumer shipping form accessible on the agency's online licensing portal. The staff amendment amends various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please identify yourself for the record?
Joshua Newton, General Counsel.
Thank you so much. There's a staff amendment. Do we have a motion for approval of the staff amendment? You guys are doing very well over there today. We have a motion and a second. Without objection is so ordered. Any questions for these guys on this particular regulation? Seeing none, please call the next regulation. Thank you.
Cabinet for Health and Family Services, Department for Medicaid Services, 907 KAR 10840 emergency with staff suggested amendment.
907-10840 emergency establishes the Kentucky Trauma Hospital Rate Improvement (KTHRI) program required by KRS 205.6412 and created by 2024 Senate Bill 28, subject to continued federal approval. The Cabinet states that the program requires participating providers in rural hospitals that treat a high percentage of Medicaid patients to meet specific quality metrics in order to receive enhanced quarterly payments for inpatient, outpatient, and professional services. The staff suggested amendment amends Section 4 to clarify that the metrics that hospitals must meet to receive the supplemental payment are established in federal law, and amends the Relates To paragraph to comply with KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Good afternoon, Jonathan Scott, Chief Legislative and Regulatory Officer, DMS.
Thank you so much. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? There is a motion and a second. Without objection is so ordered. Any questions? Co-Chair Lewis has a question.
More of a comment, but thank you, Co-Chair. Jonathan, thank you for your work on this and the department's work on this. I know sometimes this committee can get contentious on some of the things we're doing, and that's just the nature of the beast. But on the hospital rate improvement plan, I've had hospitals from across the state reach out, especially in the rural areas. This is helping them, and I appreciate the work.
Good.
Thank you.
Good.
Very unusual that we have some positive stuff from going about that direction. So thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Please call the next regulation.
Department for Community-Based Services, 922 KAR 1360 with staff suggested amendment.
922 KR 1360 amends to increase the per diem rates for private child placing therapeutic foster care levels 2 and 3 and update material incorporated by reference to reflect the rate increase. The staff suggests an amendment amends various sections to comply with the drafting requirements of KRS Chapter 13A.
Would you please state your name for the record?
Hello, I'm Melanie Taylor. I'm the Director in the Division of Protection and Permanency at DCBS.
Thank you so much. There is a staff amendment. Is there a motion for approval of the staff amendment? We have a motion. We have a second. Without objection, it is so ordered. Do we have any questions from members? We're going to start out with Senator Adams.
I have a couple of questions, Mr. Chairman, if that's okay.
Please proceed.
Thank you for being here. First of all, how much will it cost to implement these per diem rate increases?
I believe that the projected budget cost was around $10 million for a biennium.
Okay, so $10 million. Are these per diem rate increases before us today required by statute?
No.
Okay. Are the per diem increases before us today specifically required within the state budget?
That I am not sure of. I know that from the information that I got, I don't make budget decisions. Those decisions are made above me, but that when this issue came to our attention, particularly to address the placement crisis with children who have high acuity needs, and they need for therapeutic foster care rates, and this only increased the rates for level 2s and levels 3, that the money in the budget was available to cover that.
Okay, that leads me into my next question, which is how did the cabinet identify the funding?
I don't know. Those decisions are made at a different level from me.
So just to be clear, that these increases are not required by statute.
And
that these increases are not specifically required within the state budget. And that the cabinet had discretion in identifying the funding for these rate increases. Correct?
I am not sure about that. All I know is that I was given the information that the projected cost was around $10 million for the biennium and that it was available.
So that's usually called discretionary dollars. Okay. Do you happen to recall Senate Bill 151 that was passed in the 2024 session?
I do.
And that this bill provided additional supports for relative and fictive kin?
Yes.
Do you acknowledge that the provisions of Senate Bill 151 were signed into law by this governor and codified it?
I believe that it was.
And DCBS was required to file administrative regulations on Senate Bill 151?
I know that it was signed into statute, yes.
So has DCBS filed any administrative regulations on Senate Bill 151 according to statute?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Do you see a problem that you are required by statute to file administrative regulations and you have not done so?
I understand, but those regulations are filed at a different level from me and from the commissioner's office and the secretary's office.
Okay, so you can't identify the discretionary dollars, and you also can't answer the question on why the regs have not been filed according to statute.
I cannot personally identify the budgetary aspect for this regulation for 360, and to the best of my knowledge, as far as Senate Bill 151, the information that we received was that we could not implement that statute because of not being appropriated an amount in the budget for that.
Okay, and so I'm going to go back to the issue before us, which is there is no statutory claim that you all have to find these rate increases. The statute doesn't require you to find the rate increases. The budget doesn't require you to find these rate increases. But yet magically, you found the discretionary dollars to do these rate increases. So let's compare that to Senate Bill 151, which statutorily required you to file regs. And you can't come up with a dollar figure on how much a bill will cost until you design it through the regulatory process. So I just want to point out for anyone that's watching that this is a joke. That the cabinet has full discretion to implement what they want to implement, as evidenced by what we have before us today. And the governor is not a dictator. He's not a king. He has to follow the law. And in this instance, he is not following the law. So you can see my frustration.
I do understand.
Now, I do want to make it clear before this committee that I think that these rate increases are absolutely 100% appropriate. I think we should do this. But it doesn't go without understanding that Senate Bill 151 is still not implemented 2 years later, and I still don't have regs. And so my charge to you is to go back and to follow the law and file the regs on Senate Bill 151. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Any other questions from members on this particular set of regs? Senator Wilson has a question.
I don't have a question. I just have a statement that I'm in full agreement with Senator Adams' statements on this. To me, it is when you can find money to do what you want to do, but to say you don't have money to actually take care of what is in statute, and that is the executive branch's job. The executive branch cannot choose to implement or not implement what they desire to do. They have to implement what is passed by law. And when they don't do that, they are not functioning in the role that they are elected to do. And so I just want to voice my support and agreement with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator. I've got a couple quick questions which follow along the same line, basically. And I realize you're all alone today, so you're the messenger.
Yes.
And we're, I wouldn't say we're not trying to shoot the messenger. Maybe we are trying to shoot the messenger. I don't know. But you can sense our frustration.
Sure.
Okay, so my first question is, was the $10 million which you're asking for with this regulation today, where was that appropriated in the budget? Was it appropriated?
I cannot answer that question. I'm not a budget person. I'm not in the Secretary's office, so I don't have intricate knowledge specifically of even just the DCBS budget.
That's fair, and from our knowledge, it has not been appropriated in the budget at all. And so it really, this regulation shows the hypocrisy of the governor, okay? Because the argument that was used against properly funding and implementing SB 151 is, number one, the money wasn't appropriated, and therefore the money wasn't there, okay? So in this particular situation, what the governor's asking for is $10 million that wasn't appropriated, but it is there. And so the money is, amazingly, has been found in this pot of money at DCBS. And so what we're proving today is that the money actually is there to properly fund 151. And so this body is very, at least the majority part of this committee is very, very frustrated with the governor and not funding and implementing 151, which under the Constitution he's obligated to do. So I think you get the message. Hopefully, if you could send that back, we would really appreciate it. Before we go any further, first of all, is there any other questions or comments from members? Seeing none, I believe we have a Norma Hatfield who wants to speak in favor, I think. I'll let you come onto the table.
Do you want me to stay?
Just stay there for a second if you don't mind. And I don't know if you knew what you were walking into, Norma, but please make sure that green light is on. State your name for the record, and then the floor is yours.
Okay. Norma Hatfield. I'm a grandmother who's been raising 2 grandkids for 10 years, and I'm president of the Kinship Families Coalition of Kentucky. I didn't have anything formally prepared, and definitely the conversation here around the therapeutic foster care rates and SB 151, I think were conversations that needed to be had. So I'm so glad that some of that has happened. I am in support of the rate increase. What I can't speak to is how the funding came about, the emergency status for it, any plans that are in place to monitor if it's working. But I do think that those rate increases need to be there because Kentucky has, there was a report out, I believe in January of this year, Kentucky has twice the national rate of child maltreatment. So Kentucky kids struggle the most. And this therapeutic rate increase is supposed to help keep kids out of office buildings, to keep them out of hotels, all of the things that I believe the state auditor's report highlighted. These are issues that have been going on for many, many years as far as these kids being placed in office buildings. I believe there was a committee hearing back in 2023, October 2023, where the Cabinet Secretary for Health and Family Services talked about it, and I took it as a promise that he would fix it because he said, we'll pay what it takes. So I'm so glad to be here today to see that that's being proposed. But when we think about the placement for kids, such as with this rate increase that's supposed to help in regards to placing children, I think that that's why it's important that we don't forget 151 and we don't forget the kinship families, because that bill does exactly that. It helps give caregivers more time when they're looking at placement options for these vulnerable kids too. And it's as Senator Rocky Adams said, this is a law. I've been waiting over a year now for somebody to follow the law and to do something. And family after family after family has been waiting. I looked this morning, and approximately $90 a day, I think it's $89 and some change, $90 a day are the foster care rates here in Kentucky. So that's roughly $2,700 a month. And because we're not doing 151, caregivers are waiving in a time of duress that much money for the care of the children that they have, and they don't even know it until later. And this is even though this has been a whole year and we've had some discussion publicly about it, it's still a problem. I was in Bardstown a month ago, and I had a conversation with 2 grandmothers that recently had kids in their care, and they said, when I told them about 151, we didn't know. We pretty much were led to temporary custody. We waived all those dollars and other resources for those kids. And think about it, $2,700 a month. You have a child till they're 18 and they're a baby. We're talking thousands upon thousands upon thousands of dollars, and that's wrong. And I guess the only other thing I wanted to make a point in is, if the Commonwealth of Kentucky is going to take on the commitment and the responsibility of removing a child from their home, and I'm not saying they shouldn't be, especially when you look at the maltreatment rates, but when we take on, as a state, that commitment, we are supposed to be looking at the best interests of that child, taking in whatever we can do for them to make their life safer and to make their life better. We see that we need the therapeutic rates, and I hope that fixes the problem completely. We don't see in the placement options for kinship families that we're doing anything. I don't think this committee has seen a regulation. I don't see anything out there in discussion on this. And we've gone more than a year now, and all these kids in the last year have lost resources because we didn't do our best, meet our commitments and responsibilities to offer the services in a way that's in their best interest. And I just couldn't let this pass without bringing this up. So thank you for your time and hearing me.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Do we have any members who want to ask questions for either person at the table or make additional comments? Seeing none, thank you, Mrs. Hatfield, for your testimony. I'll just wrap us up with this section. For the record, I would like the presenter to know that our negative comments concerning 151 are in no relation to what the administration is doing with this particular item. I'm 100% in favor of the $10 million for this initiative, but have one final request. I don't see any motion for deficiency at this time, so this regulation will proceed forward. But I do have a request that if you could go back to the cabinet and inquire if there's any money left in the $10 million pot of money that where this money was found, that it be used to fully fund SB 151 and get that enacted. We would really appreciate it. Any comments or questions further? Seeing none, that is the final regulation for the day. Thank you so much.
The next committee meeting is currently scheduled for June 10th at 1 p.m.
Does any member have any other business to come before the committee?